is DS Jocksheimer. This is another edition of The Spectre, and I'm going to be taking a look at the latest Amityville Horror installment, the 10th Amityville Horror installment, Amityville the Awakening. This film was supposed to be released in about, 2015. It was January 2nd, 2015. They pushed around the release date over the past couple of years, once because of, audience feedback response, because it's not very good, as a lot of Amityville horror films go, and this one's no different. This is the, there's the 2005 Ryan Reynolds movie, which is a reboot of the first movie. This is a meta-sequel, which means that it takes place in a world where the other films were released. At one point in the movie, a classmate, and we'll of course we'll go back to establish why there are people moving in the Amityville Horror House. But anyway, the books, long story short, the books and the movies and stuff exist in this world. The movie with Margot Kidder and James Brolin, Amityville the Possession, and I guess the other movies, they didn't really mention all those. And of course the books. This is of course the novel that the movie was based on, and this is a Hans Holzer book, focusing on the DeFeo murders. And anyway, the movie stars Jennifer Jason Leigh, who is has a pretty prolific career, mostly in the 80s. She started in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Single White Female, Rush, to name a few. And so she somehow winds up in this movie, Paycheck, and the movie stars Cameron Moynihan, who has been on Shameless. He's a really good actor, and he played an incarnation of the Joker in the Gotham TV series, and he's actually really good in that. And he's a good actor, and Jennifer Jason Leigh is a good actress. She's good, and she does a good job with this, the best she can. And Bella Thorne is in it, and I know the name, but I've never seen her in anything else. She plays the oldest daughter, and she has a younger sister named Juliet, and Cameron Moynihan plays James, who is Bella Thorne's, who actually her name in the movie is Bella, plays her twin brother, who's in a coma after an accident. And anyway, somehow this single parent, who they don't really go into what she does for a living, moves into this affluent neighborhood and buys this house, which in real life, if you want to call this a meta-sequel, has gone close to about $1 million on the market. Okay, this is in Long Island, in Amityville, and it's not a, it's not a cheap neighborhood to live in. So, anyway, so somehow she affords to buy this house, and even though in this world, in this universe, the movies and the books and everything's been released, and I know she's younger and she may not have heard of it, she doesn't know anything about the Amityville Horror. Bella is completely, for some reason, I don't know how that could happen, but if you're going to move into a house, your mom, who I don't know what the hell she does for a living, if she won the lottery or she got an inheritance, I don't know. Your mother, it's like, we're going to move to Long Island because it was, the reason they were moving there is because it was close to her brother's neurologist. So they moved there because the doctor's nearby, and the only house that was available that was in their budget was this huge Dutch colonial in Amityville. And so Bella doesn't know what happened there until her classmates, a couple of classmates of hers, friends, after a lot of teasing, goes, "Oh, she lives there." They're like, "I don't know what they're talking about." And he shows her the book and everything, and he, oh my God, I live in the Amityville house. So the movie is terrible. And I think it would have been less terrible if she had known about this whole thing, because there's no way anybody would have not known this is the house you're moving into in this day and age. Just look it up. She's a teenager. She didn't like, ooh, what's this house? Let's just look the address up. Boom. All the information's there. So anyway, they move in, and her brother, and on top of this, her mother can somehow afford life support for her brother, who is a fucking vegetable, at home. So the kid is hooked up downstairs to everything, and shit starts happening. The neurologist shows up, and flies start coming out of James somehow, and he's emaciated. Of course, he's laying in bed, and he can't move, and it just, you know, and somebody else comes into the room. I think the daughter or the mom does, and the flies really aren't there. It's just some kind of, he's having some hallucination or whatever, and so anyway, and then so Bella's not too, I don't know if she's convinced of anything or not, but shit starts happening in the house, obviously, and of course the infamous Red Room becomes kind of central to the plot of this movie. Her friends, from a girl from school and this kid, come over and they watch the Amityville Horror movies. He brings over the first one from the 70s, and like the sequel, The Possession, which is a prequel to that one. They watch those, and shit starts happening. The power goes out, and all this stuff happens, and it's very. The movie does. There's no hook to it. It's not good. It's not like a good horror movie. It's not scary. It's just they just figured like this was some way of distinguishing this film, was having this person who was comatose get possessed by the house because he would be vulnerable. So, and the same things happen, the same themes, the hallucinations of the shootings, the DeFeo shootings and all that, of that happening to them, and the dog, I think the dog, they have a dog, right? Yeah, they have a dog in the movie. I almost forgot about that. The dog's dead by the dock. And another thing that's annoying about this film is in the beginning of it, they show, you know, the news footage from the 70s of the original house, the real house. And the actual house, the house in the film, which they actually built for the house, it's a set, it looks more like the White House with the brick chimney in between the infamous windows, like the one from the James Brolin movie, which is not the actual house. And the house is not situated the same way as it is in the newsreels, which they show prominently. They don't just show like a little snippet, like a split second. They show it for a while. So you're thinking, well, yeah, okay, 40 years later, the house is still kind of look like that. It might be painted, but so that doesn't match up at all. And there's no boathouse. There's like, there's some kind of, there's like a channel or a waterway after we're in a little dock, but they kind of took that out. And the house is completely, it's just not situated at all like it is in the newsreel footage, or we call it newsreel footage, but that was another annoying thing, which made the movie seem, yeah, it sucked. I don't know why they couldn't build a house or make the house look like it would have, you know, like the house from the 70s, you know, 40 years later, so it would like, oh, kind of match up a little bit, because that's supposed to be the same fucking house, but, you know. So everything about this is stupid. Bella didn't know anything about the Amityville Horror before she moves into the house, and somehow her single-parent mom can afford it. They don't know what the fuck she does for a living. She seems like she's about half nuts herself, and her brother gets possessed by whatever, the poltergeist in the house. Who knows? So anyway, he goes down to the Red Room eventually, James does, and it basically, you know, gives him strength, and it revitalizes his body, and he's all like ripped and shit, and it just all hell breaks loose, and it's predictable, and it's just beyond terrible. This movie sucks. I can see why this movie was not, you know, it wasn't released on its original release date, and they went back and there were reshoots, and they dicked around with it, and I guess Miramax was the original distributor, and actually Lionsgate's is, which is kind of scaring me because I live in Lionsgate's apartments, so I don't know if that means something. I probably shouldn't even be reviewing this movie. So, but it's supposed to, the thing is, if the movie is, they're going to do this movie, they could have done it maybe in a cool way of doing a meta sequel where this takes place in the actual house and people have some plausible people move into it. People that could actually afford the fucking house in the first place. This was just some, like, goofy send-up, like, oh yeah, they just moved in, and the brother is kind of in a coma, so he's vulnerable to being possessed, so that's how we're going to write it. But we're not going to explain how the fuck she could possibly afford this house, and we're going to make the daughter not even realize that it's the Amityville Horror House after she's moved in and got enrolled in school, and her friends at school tell her this shit. So anyway, the movie, I don't even know if I want to go into the movie end. I mean, there's spoilers. I can't even spoil this movie because it ends so predictably. Basically, the son goes on a rampage, they have an aunt named Candace, Joan's sister, Joan's the mother, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Candace comes over, she gets killed, and then James, as possessed James, goes upstairs to kill the younger sister Juliet, and then Bella jumps on him, goes through one of the, the infamous windows, and drags him outside of what I guess is the circle, the possession circle of the house, and he says, "Thank you," and dies. And at the end there's kind of this little epilogue where they're like, oh yeah, they're being questioned about the murder and everything, even though his James' prints were found on the gun. Somehow he got a fucking gun. Well, no, Mom had a gun earlier in the movie. There's a scene where the mother's in the basement with a gun pointed at the kids because she thought they were intruders. And, but yeah, the daughter actually goes down and bashes out the wall to reveal the Red Room, which doesn't exist. The Red Room, was, in actuality, was a storage room that happened to be painted with red paint. Under, in the basement. And it doesn't effectively touch upon the DeFeo murders in a real way, or use any established facts of the timeline when the Lutzes lived there, irregardless of their story, which is a fucking hoax. It doesn't talk too much about it, and overall it's just a very cheap, it's just a bad story, a terrible fucking story. I mean, not that there was one Amityville horror movie that had a possessed lamp involved a possessed lamp bought at the Amityville Horror House from the 80s, and that was like a straight-to-TV movie. This movie barely saw. It was limited in limited release in select cities on October 28th of this year, and then 2017, and then they released it on DVD and Blu-ray on November 14th of 2017. So it wasn't in theaters very much. It got terrible reviews for good reason, because it sucks. They put absolutely if they were gonna bother to make this movie and put a budget into it and build sets and have top-notch effects in it, why have such a piss poor horrible story? And they had some good actors too. In this, they could have they had all these, it's like they had some of the best resources, but they made this piece of shit because they made an Amityville horror movie. That's basically it. It's that's the curse of the Amityville horror, is that you cannot make a good movie about it. This is just inexcusably bad. It wasn't like a college movie. It wasn't like even a really low-budget trauma piece of shit movie. I would have understood it. If it was a trauma movie, it would have been fucking better. This is, it just is. It's awful. I wouldn't recommend this movie. I just happened to find it today, and I had been wanting to see it. I was curious about it, and I think it was worse than I thought it was going to be. It just wasn't, it just didn't do anything new. It did nothing new with the sort of Amityville mythos. I would say that the 2005 movie is much better than this, and that's not really a good flick. This tried to, in a way, be more realistic by, you know, being in a world where there were Amityville horror movies, including the 2005 movie, which is mentioned in this film, and it failed miserably at it. And I don't think it would have ever been like a big thing if they even made a marginally good movie, but they just didn't even do that. It really, this really fucking sucks. I would be ashamed if I was in this movie or had anything to do with it, if I acted in it. I mean, and that's the thing, I mean, there were some good actors. I mean, Cameron Moynihan is a good actor. Jennifer Jason Leigh is a good actor. And some of the other people who are in this film. The doctor, I'm trying to think of his name, but he played the guy from the villain from RoboCop, and he played the dad from that '70s show. He's a cool actor. He's been in a lot of shit. He's a really good character actor. He's in this, and this is just one of these movies. It was made a few years ago, and they just couldn't release it because they didn't have a good product on their hand, and they released this shit. That's, I think, all I could really say about this film. I mean, I've described some of the plot, and there is some source material if you want to know about the actual. There's the book, The Amityville Horror. I only have one other book, old book. It's written by Hans Holzer, who's I think he's a parapsychologist, demonologist. And it focuses more on the DeFeo murders. This basically is what the Lutz's official story is, technically. And this is, you know, I don't know, probably in the beginning they thought they were going to make some money at that. And they really, I just, as a person who isn't a filmmaker, I couldn't imagine seeing the first cut of that. As a producer or even a director, and just like, oh god, it's worthless. It's a worthless film. It really is. There isn't one. This film makes me fucking angry is what it does. It makes me fucking angry. So anyway, so that's my take on the Amityville the Awakening. You'll be able to watch it. I wouldn't pay. I paid money to see this, so you hopefully won't have to. So, but anyway, and then I spent time and energy making a video, analyzing it. So anyway, the best Amityville, I don't know, they're all pretty bad. Actually, the first one's a piece of shit too. Margot Kidder and James Brolin. It's kind of, at least it's kitschy and funny in some ways, but it's bad. But anyway, I would be interested if you've seen this film. Leave your comments below. If you like my channel, subscribe. My name is D.S. Yoxheimer, and this has been another edition of The Spectre. Thanks for watching.